Well, good morning, everybody. So it is so good to see you. We have lots of stereotypes in our society of what is really good that sometimes are not always really good. And one of them is the stereotype that if you are an excellent leader, you are a driven leader. Driven leaders it's always a mark of distinction. I'm going to challenge that today, and here's the question that I want to ask you. When you think of a driven leader, and don't tell me what you think I want to hear, just be honest. When you think of a driven leader, in one word, how would you just, in your mind, what is your perception of a driven leader? Obsessive. Okay. Who else? Aggressive. Perfectionism. Motivated. Who else? Determined. Focused. Passionate. So there's lots of mixed thoughts. Today, what I want to talk to you about is there is actually when you think of a driven leader, you think of success. I will tell you that there is actually a better way to lead that gets long-term results, not at the expense of people, but because of people. Make sense? So I am going to talk about the 8 P's of driven leaders. First of all, a driven leader is what we call a performance-based leader. Performance is everything to a driven leader. Did you hear that? And the reason for that is what we would call a driven leader. We call that a fear-based leader. And here's why. When I am performance-based, I have a basic core narrative that is going on in my life at all times. And that core narrative that I don't want anybody else to know, in fact, I'm going to try to overcompensate for it with my performance, is that I'm not enough. That somehow me being me and me being true to me is somehow not worthwhile. So because we all have a basic need at the end of the day to matter, to know that we are making a meaningful difference in our lives and we're just not checking the clock every day. And when I'm driven, I have determined that if I'm not enough from the inside, there's only one way that I can find a way to believe in myself as a person. It's not from the inside, it's from where? From the outside. And when it's from the outside, what that means is that literally my value comes from what other people think about me. My value comes from the judgments of others regarding my performance. Here's the second one. When I am driven, I am pushed from behind. Think about it. When I am deliberate, I am pulled by purpose. When I am deliberate, the purpose and the values of my life are everything. And I don't make a decision unless I know that it is on purpose in my life, where I have the highest impact for the least amount of effort while having the greatest amount of joy. That's what purpose is. And deliberate people are pulled by a sense of purpose. Now here's the challenge. Less than 1% of people know their purpose. If you don't know your purpose, you're going to live by everybody else's noise. If you don't know your purpose, you're going to live by everybody else's expectations. And what happens when you base your life's value and identity based on everyone else's expectations? What's the problem with that? You can never win. Because enough is never enough. And so what drives a driven leader is fear. Now, let me ask you this question. Fear of what? For those of us who struggle with being driven, what are you afraid of?
Rejection.
Rejection. Talk to me about that, Michael.
I don't want to.
Okay. For fear of being rejected. Well, what a clown. I mean.
I think in some ways it can be existential, like if I'm rejected.
Existential. I'm from West Virginia. That's 4 syllables.
like I will suffer, like Maslow's hierarchy, like base existence, like my way of life is threatened.
Yeah.
And at the top, my sense of self, my ego,
Yeah. So if someone rejects me, what do we tend to do? Reject ourselves. There will be 800 people listening. And if I get one negative comment, guess what I'll tend to focus on? The one, and I ignore the 799. And you guys are going like this. Isn't that crazy? Now, let me give you another one. I think you're starting to see a pattern here. Performance-based, push from behind, and a driven leader pushes people away. Driven people just wear people out. Driven people, there is no way that you can win. Because driven people typically, like myself, struggle with perfectionism. If you can succeed all by yourself, I will guarantee you, you're not succeeding of something that is worthwhile. It takes a community to pull something off. Now let's look at the other, which is driven. When I am driven, I'm investing in people. When I'm driven, I know that my people are going to make mistakes. But when they make mistakes, when I'm deliberate, I should say, when I am deliberate, when they make a mistake, what does a deliberate person do? A driven person beats them up. Don't make that mistake again or else, or I'm going to hold you accountable for that, and it's gotcha language. Now, I'm not saying deliberate people want mediocrity. They want success as much as anybody else, but the motive behind their success is completely different. A driven person wants success because they have to prove themselves to themselves. The deliberate person says, I want to succeed as an act of gratitude for everything that I've been given. One has to, the other chooses to. You see the difference? Here's another thing. I love this one. Driven leaders are parked when the snow comes. Let me explain by that. You know when you can really tell the difference between a deliberate leader and a driven leader? When adversity comes. It will drive a driven leader crazy. A deliberate leader, it will cause them to go deep into insight and evaluation. So when adversity comes, who shows up for a deliberate leader? Who shows up? Everyone that you have been pouring water into. And the irony is you weren't pouring water into them so that you would get a return on your investment. You were pouring water into them because you know that is one of the highest ways to live. But when I'm driven, I'm so finite and fixed in my thinking that I take all my water and what do? I keep it to myself. And so when the snow comes in our lives, we're left with whom? Ourselves. The mark of a leader is that when there is adversity, your team will rise up with you. That is the mark of a team that is led by a deliberate leader, not a driven leader. Here's another one. When I'm a driven leader, panic comes with criticism. How many of us struggle with criticism? We all, just about all of us, but you all, here's the difference. A deliberate leader will go, you know what? This is not criticism, it's feedback. This is not an attack on my value, because if I'm performance-based and someone who cares about me comes along and wants to give me helpful information to help me to be better, not be a better person, but be better in what I am doing as an act of gratitude and using my gifts. If I'm a deliberate leader, how am I going to receive that information? How am I going to receive it? Thank you. Thank you that you care enough about me, that you want to help me. Oh, and by the way, deliberate leaders will give feedback in that spirit. A driven leader will give it in the spirit of I gotcha. It's a power. And if you don't change, it's a power game. Make sense? And so, just a couple more. Driven people are patients suffering from destination disease. You know what destination disease is? When I get the right person on my team, I'll be happy. When we meet our sales goals, I'll be happy. When I have enough victories, I'll be happy. A driven leader is always consumed with the future because the moment is never enough. When I am a deliberate leader, I know that if I focus on the moment and I focus on being fully present with my team, and I'm constantly wanting to be at my very best for the sake of my people to help them be their best, the moments have a way of taking care of the future. The moments have a way of taking care of the future. Here's another one. Driven leaders pound doors that don't exist. I will this to happen. By golly, I'll work harder. I'll put in more hours. I will this into happen. Can you identify with that? It's amazing what happens when I'm a deliberate leader. I quit trying to work on fixing the problem and I start working on fixing whom? Me. And when I am growing people want to become a part of that. A deliberate person recognizes that I'm not the center of the world, that there is a force that is greater than me in my life, and that I'm going to work on myself inward. And when I'm doing that, the vertical will bring the horizontal when it's time. One last one. With a driven leader, people are pawns instead of prizes. A driven person sees people as tools. A deliberate person sees people of infinite value. And they're constantly pouring in the lives of other people. And they're not doing it to expect a return for investment. They're doing it because they want to keep putting water into people's wells. And the irony is that the investment comes back in tenfold without you even wanting it or expecting it. Make sense? This think tank represents our philosophy about what we've been teaching today. That we're pouring into you because it's the right thing to do. And if you do it for the right reasons and focus on bringing excellence to everything that you do, the future takes care of itself. Make sense? You all, thank you. I hope that if you have comments, that you'll get in touch with us. If you want to continue your growth, check us out. We love growing people, and we love growing you, and we are honored by your presence, both here today and for all of you who are online. Thank you. Let's give ourselves a hand.